All right. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed a little break there, cup of tea or whatever it is you particularly like. That quick introduction, I know we've got a lot of questions for people. You want to know more. I know it's awful when you just have a real high-level thing and everybody wants all the information straight away. Stick with us. We've got it all for you. I'm going to start now. This is this kind of mini course, if you like, this looking at the new XAML framework. It's about the XAML design and also about digging into how apps behave running under the Windows runtime, XAML-based apps. So this first one is, if you're already a XAML-based developer, if you're already a Windows 8.1 store app developer, then what I'm going to show you here is going to seem pretty familiar to you in a lot of ways, which is good. Yeah. It's a converged platform. It's awesome. So you're going to think, oh, that's all right. I can build for phone. Yeah. There is a load of stuff in here still, though, that's phone specific about things like how the status bar at the top and the app bar at the bottom, how they behave on phones. So there's still obviously plenty for you to learn that will be new. If you're a Silverlight app developer, this is going to look kind of familiar, but yet strangely different. So this is the new way of building Windows XAML-based apps for Windows Phone 8.1. We've got 7 modules that kind of go through each aspect of that, and then after that we go drop down a level below the views and start looking at the APIs. So in this one we're going to look, and some of this is going to be a bit introductory because I know that a lot of the people who are going to be watching this are experienced and have built apps before. But equally, there's a lot of people who will not. So some of this is going to be introductory, but just bear with me. We very quickly, halfway through this module, get into phone-specific stuff that will be new to everybody. So we're going to introduce XAML, if you haven't met it before, a little bit about how you lay out a page. And we're going to build a single-page app in this module, just one page, just to keep it simple. And over a bit more detail about the controls we've got to use to build a UI, looking about stars and themes and the app bar and the status bar. So a lot of stuff. I'm going to keep the pace up, I'm afraid. So we already looked at this in the introductory session. If you want to create an app, a project in Visual Studio 2013, we've got all those different project templates that you saw already, Universal, Windows, and Windows Phone. If we create a Windows Runtime app project, kind of looks a bit like this. You've got your solution. A solution is your high-level container for one or more projects. So here is typically, if you create an app for just Windows Phone, you'd have a single project in there. And this one is called App 6. And in brackets, it tells you what platform it's targeting, Windows Phone 8.1. Then you've got some references. These are the libraries it's referencing, which is the Windows Phone app, which is the Windows Runtime stack for the Windows Runtime XAML stack for these apps, and then also .NET for Windows Store apps as well. This is a C# app, so there's a number of .NET classes. We then got a bunch of assets. This is kind of artwork. So you need to put in here your default application tile and your wide tiles, and also a bit of artwork needed for the store app and the application icon that appears in the programs list on the phone. So there's artwork associated with your app. Then we've got app.xaml and its code behind, app.xaml.cs, or code beside, whatever you like to call that. This is kind of a singleton. This is the Uber object, if you like, for an app. It's where all the initialization launch logic runs. It does the initial navigation to your first page. So this is kind of the bootstrap logic for your app goes in here, and also you might put some XAML resources that are shared. Then you got one or more pages, so it depends on which template you choose to create a new project. The basic app, the blank app, will have just a single page in it, and typically it's called main page. You could call it whatever you like. And then we've got this AppX manifest, the package app manifest. This is where we already went into that in the demo, the Universal App demo in session 1, to set toast enabled. We clicked that. All that is an XML file. So when you're working with the package, the manifest designer, and clicking things in there, all it's doing is writing XML into this file underneath. And this is the declaration that goes with your app about what it does, if it needs any special access to kind of networks or to user data. This all goes in here. And we build apps, and we're going to look at this is an old favorite. Anybody who's followed any of the jump starts before will recognize this. This is an example of a page from something called the Contoso Cookbook. which I found out recently on Twitter the other week, was actually written by Jeff Prozice of Wintellect. Yeah, originally. I didn't know that. So hats off to Jeff. We got plenty of mileage out of this guy. And this is actually the app I used in the Windows Phone 8 Jumpstart. And then we were thinking, what should we do for the Windows Phone 8.1? And I thought, well, given that it's kind of the same but different, why don't we use the Contoso cookbook again? Because then if you're interested and want to look at how they look side by side, you can look at the Silverlight 8.0 version, which is in the Windows Phone 8 Jumpstart, and actually will turn up again in the very last session, session 23, when we look at Silverlight 8.1. And you can compare it to this, which is the Windows Runtime version of the same thing. So every page, anyway, back to the text, every page that you make up is defined by XAML, which is Extensible Application Markup Language. It's a particular dialect of... can we get the countdown clock running? Yeah, just talk to our support at the back so I know how much time we've got. Thank you. And yeah, so you're working in XML effectively, and that defines your everything you see on that screen is defined by XML. So and we worked with some controls already. So there's a text block at the top, and we're applying styles, so they're different, bigger and smaller text. Then we've got another text block, which is our title, Quiche Lorraine. Then we've got an image element and another text block, and so it goes on. A text block is just for showing text. Output, and then everything sits inside a layout control, and in this case probably a grid. Then we've got other layout controls which are all about arranging these controls together. So a stack panel where you can stick controls into it and it will automatically stack them either vertically, as in this case, or in the bottom one horizontally. So these layout controls all work together. We're going to build this in a minute, so if you're not used to this and haven't done any XAML design, you'll be able to see how it works. And on each XAML element, we put properties on it, like how high up in X and Y coordinates of where it is on the screen, what's the height and width, what font are we using, what the color is, and all this kind of stuff. And that actually, the properties you set on an XML element are obviously defined as attributes in XML. These are used by the XAML renderer to figure out how to draw the resultant scene to the screen. So dig a bit deeper into the different controls. So I touched there on these container controls. These are all the kind of, if you could call these as panels, if you like. There are different kinds of panels. Canvas is one. Actually, I don't think I've ever used a canvas, to be honest. You can draw elements anywhere on a canvas. But typically, if you want to have a kind of a free-form screen where you want to put stuff, you just have a single-cell grid, which is actually the same thing. Stack panel, as I said, is stacks things vertically or horizontally, and a grid you can actually divide it up into multiple different cells. So here's a stack panel, a few examples of a stack panel. And you see at the top one, we've got a stack panel which has got a certain width. What you're seeing on the left is the XAML, and on the right is what it looks like. And you see that bit in the yellow things. We've got a width of 200 and a height of 50, and then we've got a horizontal alignment of center. So that's why that red square, that red rectangle, is appearing in the center at a width of 200 and a height of 50. And then underneath that, we've got stacked vertically underneath it, because it's the default for a stack panel is vertical orientation. We've got another rectangle which is painted orange, and that one has a width of 200 and a height of 50, and again is center. But then we have this margin property which offsets it. So we've got a margin has 4 elements: left, top, right, and bottom. So minus 20 there is the left, and minus 10 is the top, which is why you're seeing it shifted slightly leftwards and slightly upwards, seeing as how we count down from the top, positioning that one. And then you can see the bottom one has a stack panel orientation of horizontal, where we've just got 4 buttons, fee, fi, fo, fum, and unsurprisingly, it just stacks them, positions them horizontally. That margin equals 20 puts a margin between every element inside it. So you can see examples of how that works. Grid is much more complicated. You can actually define columns and rows in it. And then any elements you put underneath it, you have these thing called attached properties. So if you look at the second second yellow picked out box underneath there, we've got 3 rectangles, and we've got these attached properties where the first one says grid.row equals 0, grid.column equals 0, which is the default, by the way. If you don't specify anything, that's where they'll go. They'll go into the top left element of the grid. And then underneath that, we've got grid 0, row 0, column 1. So that will go in the top row and the second column across. And then the third one is grid row 0, grid.column 2. So it goes in the third cell across the top row. And then underneath that, you can see that we're actually sticking stuff into the top row as well, into different columns. And you can see how stuff gets laid out. Here's another example where you can actually nest grids as well. You can nest controls as well. So we have rectangles, text box, and then underneath that we've got a stack panel, and inside that we've got another stack panel. So and then we've got a number of then we've got a load of text blocks in there. So let's actually start building our Contoso cookbook and put that into an example that you'll be able to follow through. Over to Visual Studio, and this is a project I've created called Contoso Cookbook Simple, which is a simple project. It's exactly the same as a blank project, apart from the fact I've already added in all these images just to save a bit of time. So there's loads of pictures of different recipes. So we're going to build a single page, and then as the morning goes on and into the afternoon, we're going to expand this out and end up with a fully working app with all of the bits and pieces. So this is kind of our test piece for this building a Windows Runtime XAML app. So we're going to design the main page grid. So here's our main page. Let's get the designer up, drag that across. So we see plenty of XAML, and then we've got our design surface over there. And then we're going to start building our grid. We're going to split the, rather like we did before, we're going to select the grid and then put a row in it. I'm not going to particularly size it accurately. We'll fix that later on. So we've got two rows there, 143 star and 497 star. The star height means proportions. So the bottom has got 497ths of the page, and the top one has got 143s of the page. And so, they're proportional sizes. We'll fix that up into something a bit more specific later on. So we're going to design the page header area first up here. So I'm going to go off to my toolbox. Let's just pin that in so we can see it. And it's, for some reason, it's adding in some items. There we go. Okay. Oh, hang on. Let's get our designer visible so we can make it a bit easier to work with. Okay. There's our designer, and get our toolbox up again, pin it out, and then we're going to make that a bit bigger, 50%. There we go. So there's our top region. So we've got our grid. We're going to drag a stack panel from here and paste it onto the top. And then just position it up. If you go up, you can see the red. You might be able to see the red siding. That means we stuck it up into the top thing there. I'm then going to right-click onto that and get rid of it. It sticks something on. Let's put this over a bit. It's put it on, and it automatically puts all these margins on it and a height and a width by default. But actually, I want it to simply fill that area. So I'm going to fix that by going layout, reset all, and now our stack panel completely fills that top area of the grid. And then I'm going to set a bit of a margin on it so that we offset that so it's nicely laid out. So I'm going to go down here to layout, and lots of properties you can set in here. I'm going to put a left margin on it of 10 and a top margin on it of bottom margin of 30. So that just puts a bit of spacing from the top and a bit of spacing from below. And you'll see actually by changing those properties, it simply wrote that into the XAML. So it's just about nice layout. Then I'm going to get a text block and drop that onto onto the stack panel. So it's positioned up in the top left corner. I'm going to resize that so I can right click on it and say edit style, and we get loads of built-in styles. So I'm going to use one that's going to make it nice and big, which is a title text block style. Oh, not so big, not so small. The next one's going to be bigger. And I'm going to change the text on that to what it should be, which is, of course, the Contoso cookbook. So there's our header. And then I'm going to drag myself another text block and drop that underneath it in the stack panel. This is the one that I want to put a bigger style on it. Edit style, apply resource, and this one I'm going to use a header text block style, which is a nice big one, which is typically you'd see there. So there's our text is currently text block. I'm going to change that to, we're going to do quiche, spell it right, Lorraine. So this is going to be a one page from our recipe book. So there we go, quiche Lorraine. Now I'm also going to make sure that this doesn't overflow on smaller devices. So we can, if we had too big text, that fits nicely on there. But if we do it on a smaller device, so we're going to go, you go into TeleSense. You can change things directly in the XAML as well, or you can change them in the properties. So loads of ways to set this up. And then we're going to have text trimming on here is equal to character ellipsis. So it will automatically trim it if it can't fit it in. So that's a nice feature we can do. It's a new feature with text blocks that was not available on Silverlight XAML. Then it'll look a bit like this. So now we're going to, I'm going to just change the size of our grid here. This row, which is currently 140 of it, I'm just going to change that to be an auto-sized row. So what that means is it just automatically sizes it to contain whatever controls you put in it. So this is one of the nice fluid layout things that we've got with XAML. So that is automatically sized for whatever you put in it. And then the rest of it now has changed to 1 star because it's 1/1 of what's there, whatever is left. So if we added more rows, that we could divide it up in a fluid way as well. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now I'm going to build my content out. So I'm going to drag a grid from the toolbox, and I want to build this content area down here. So go and find ourselves a grid. I'm going to lay out the content area, and that's going to go into row 1, column 0, which is the only column of our container grid. Again, I'm going to fix the layout, reset all. So now it fills the entire space of that. And then I'm going to create some rows in that. And this time I'm actually going to, just to show that I can, rather than use the designer, I'm going to actually type it directly into the XAML. So you can go grid. And most people, they use whatever suits them as to how they want to work with XAML. So here's my grid row definition. Some people like to type it in, and some people like to use the tools, sometimes the designers or the property window. You've got all of those options. And this height is going to be equal to, and I'm going to use the star thing here, 109 star. So that's my first one. And then we're going to add another one under another row under there. So, I'll get opening my tag right. Row definition. And this one height is going to be of 155 star. Okay, and then I need another row which is going to have the preparation time. So the top row is going to be an image, then we've got our instructions for the recipe, and our bottom row is going to be height of, actually this one is just going to be an auto one. So we're going to stick the preparation time into that. Okay, so we're going to drag an image onto the top row. This is going to be our image, and we're going to stick that into there, and again just position. Oh, not that. And then position it into that top cell. Do a layout reset all. So it fills all of that cell in our grid. And then we can go and put a nice image onto it. So let's go and find our source property. Here's our source property. And if you do a drop down, you can see all of the images that are in the project which I put in to start. I'm going to choose that one. There we go. Looks like a quiche Lorraine. And we're going to set that to uniform to fill, to actually fill the whole area. So that's now we've got a nice image. So this is coming together. And now I need to do the instructions bit. So the instruction bit is going down here underneath the image. But actually instructions could be quite long. So what I'm going to do is put a multi-line text block on there, but I'm going to put it inside a scroll viewer control, which allows it to scroll up and down. So there we go. Scroll viewer. Again, reset all, layout, reset all, and now that fills the area. So there's our scroll viewer. And then I'm going to open up this scroll viewer. So we've now got open, close tags. And then I'm just going to save a bit of time. I'm going to put my text block in there. I'm going to go Control Q, insert a XAML snippet, and I've got, here is my instructions. Now, this is a particularly ugly and crazy bit of UI design here. You will see that I've got this text block in here, and it's you would of course not build an app like this. I'm doing this for a reason, because we're going to come back and make this look nice and fix it later on. But I wanted to build a single page app, and this is kind of how we wanted to do it. Okay, so loads of text in there. Now, one thing you'll notice, make this, is that it's hard up against the left here. I don't quite like that, so I want to just put a bit of a margin on this containing grid. Let's put a left and right margin on it, so this is nicely spaced. It's 10, by the way. If you're a Silverlight developer, you might be used to, the magic number used to be 12, but with Windows Runtime XAML, it more likely tends to end up as 10. So there we've got a nice little bit of spacing. We're nearly done with this, so now I need to. We're just going to put the last little bits of this onto this. So under the scroll viewer, I'm going to save a bit of time. Go Control X. I've got another snippet just to finish this off, which is the prep time. So here we've got the prep time down the bottom here, which is a bit of text, and then the number of minutes it will take, and that XAML I just pasted in. You'll notice that the foreground color is something called the phone accent brush. This is how you show stuff on the screen using the user's selected accent color. We'll come on to that accent color and things in a little while. So that should be good. We can run it, and that's we've got a quite nice looking one-page app that I've built out using all those layout controls. There we go. And quiche Lorraine, and it's this instructions. You see it in the scroll viewer, so you can scroll and read all the instructions. Not perhaps the best formatting, but there you are. It's all there. And there's our image. It's a single page app. There are no pages to go to, but that's a good starting point and gives you a flavor for designing in Windows Runtime XAML. All right. Okay, so that was a demo, sort of laying out controls and building out the first version of our Contoso cookbook that we're going to add to. I very briefly introduced these categories of controls in the first session, the common controls, which look exactly the same when you use on both Windows and on Windows Phone. The optimized ones, which is like the date picker, the command bar is another one, and the time picker, and there's a few others, where you program them the same in the XAML for your views for the Windows Phone, and you program exactly the same in your views for big Windows, but they might actually render slightly differently because they're optimized for the platform. And then you've got these signature controls, and we're going to dig a bit deeper into all of these categories. So the signature ones are the ones that encapsulate the best practices, the nice behavior. So the common controls first. As it says, a button is a button. What is a button? It's there's not a lot of variation for a button. So these are the common controls. We're going to start not with buttons, but with text handling controls. If you're a Silverlight Windows Phone developer, you will be pleased to see lots of nice new features, such as these headers. Text boxes have headers. Yeah. Yes. How nice is that? So you see in the graphic on the right, you've got text box header text and spell checking and placeholder text. Those are all headers. So they're just properties on the control. You don't have to have separate text blocks, so that's awesome. Rich text block, which paragraphs and spans, and you can have richly formatted text. Obviously, the text box for text input, and that has spell checking, placeholder text, text prediction, and input scope, which we're going to talk about in just a second. And then the password box, which obviously obscures your text entry, but not enough when you're doing demos because everybody can see the character for a second. But anyway, that's a problem for us. Not for you. Yeah, input scope. So this is one of the properties you can put on a text box, which influences the particular keyboard the phone shell will display for you. So the top example there, you say inputs, you've got text box, input scope equals email SMTP address. So you'll see that what it does is it adds in onto the keyboard, it displays characters right up there that are commonly used in email addresses. And the next one is a currency amount and symbol. And actually there's about, is there 20 of these? Different input scopes?
The input scopes, yeah.
Yeah,
there's
about 20 of these.
A couple dozen.
Yeah, there's quite a few. So, and they're kind of, you can consider them to be hints to the phone, and it will do its best guess to try and give you the appropriate keyboard, depending on which locale you're in and all that sort of thing. So, but this middle one there, currency amount and symbol, is numbers and currency symbols. And then the bottom one is just a number one. So you can really help the usability of your app by putting the right input scope depending on the kind of data you are expecting them to put in. Now, these don't actually limit the kind of data they can put in, because you could have a user that has copied some text on some other, in an email, OneNote or whatever, and then they're in your app, and you can put this nice number input scope up, but they will quite happily choose to paste the text into your text box. So you must still obviously put code into your app to verify the data that they've entered. So, but this obviously helps your users to get the right kind of encourages them to put the right kind of input in an easy way. Buttons, right? Buttons and hyperlinks. Yeah, so a button. I always like this idea that XAML controls are kind of they used to be described, still are described as lookless controls, in the sense that actually when you drag a button out of the toolbox and stick it onto your page, and it comes out with a nice square button, like the simple button at the top there. That simple button, that's what you think to be a button, but actually all you're doing there is putting a control onto your page with some kind of default rendering. So all of the controls that we give you in the SDK have got default templates that define what they look like when you just drag them out of the toolbox and drop them on. That's not to mean you're stuck with that. As the second one, there are certain properties on a control like the button where you can change the background, the border brush. Like the second example, that coloured button is a nice coloured button. It's still the same as the previous button, but obviously looks different. But a button at the end of the day is just something that the user can click. That's what a button is. And then that Microsoft Surface 2 there is a good example of something that the user can click, which actually is that all of that is defined by that content that's called out by the yellow dashed box in the middle of the slide there. So you can re-template a grid till the cows come home. So here we've got a button where actually its content, what you are showing in this button, is a grid with 2 columns, and in those columns you've got an image and a stack panel containing 2 text boxes, and the result is what you see on the right there. So very, very flexible. All of these controls have retemplate. That's when we say something is retemplatable, this is the kind of thing we're talking about, where you can go in and change the layout of a header or its whole appearance if you want. And then the bottom one there is a hyperlink button, which is a simple hyperlink where the user can tap on it and it will navigate to something in the web browser. And all buttons have click events associated with them. So when the user presses a button or selects an item in a list or in some way chooses some control radio button in your UI, you run some code and you can do stuff. And of course there's loads of other kinds of buttons, toggle buttons, checkboxes and radio buttons, AppBar buttons we're going to come to in a while. We have progress rings and progress bars. These are very important. They're important across all mobile apps, particularly important in phone apps because you want to avoid that user frustration thing. When your code is doing something that's taking a bit of time, you need to keep them informed that something is happening. And you do that with progress rings and progress bars. And we've got these controls that are very easy to do that in line. Later on, I'm going to tell you how to put a progress, one of these indeterminate, the dots that race across the screen, put that up in the status bar, which actually I would say is kind of the de facto standard for most phone apps. You want to put it up on the top of the screen in the status bar. But if you want to put it in line, these are the controls to use. These optimized controls, right, the date picker, time picker. So these are the same API on both Windows and Windows Phone, but they actually render differently, and they're very flexible as well. We've also got this thing called flyouts, and I want to call these out. So these are built into a lot of the controls in any case, such as the list picker and this sort of thing. So And these also are optimized in the sense that on big Windows, they might just give you a drop-down box. Whereas on Windows Phone, typically when you get over five items, it will go full screen on you. So an example, choose an app over there, and there is a flyout that has gone full screen on you. So they tend to be flexible, and they'll either show inline if it's a small number of items, or full screen if they're not. Now, if they're inline, if it's just these tend to be light dismiss, which means that as soon as you hit the back button, they disappear. Or if it's actually over an overlay, if you've only got a small number of items and it's showing on your screen, if the user just taps outside of it, and I'll show an example of this in a moment, they'll just automatically dismiss. They'll disappear. So this is the way you might do a context menu. So the bottom example there is a button flyout with a menu attached to it. So when the user taps that button, show menu flyout, you get this the pop-up menu will come up, and the user can toggle one of the options on it. This is a very interesting one. This is a phone-only control. This is one that's not available on big Windows. Everything else I've talked to you so far is available on both. But this is a custom message box. So it's a custom message dialog, if you like, where you can place arbitrary content. And it supports, like, the left one is a partial screen and the one on the right is a full screen. The way you use this, in its simplest way, you can just use it in code. You can say contact dialog equals a new dialog, set some properties on it, and then hook up some event handlers. You can see there we've hooked up an event handler on the secondary button click. And then you call content dialog result equals await dialog.showAsync, and that will show the dialog up, and then when that code is executed, you'll be able to check the result and see which button the user pressed. But actually, the more usual way you will use a content dialog is actually as a bit like creating a user control. So here you can go into Project Add New Item, and one of the items on the Add New Item is a content dialog, and that will stick this about dialog in this example, whatever name you give it, into your project, and then you can code the UI just the same as if you were building a page, and design it and put your logic in it, and then when you want to use it, you use the code shown on the bottom left there. You new an instance of it up in your code behind, and then call the showAsync method on it to actually show it on the screen. So that's nice. We've got auto suggest boxes, another phone-only control, where you write some code to provide suggestions, and it will also give you back give you selections so that you can tap on one to select it. Then we got these. Now I'm going to just talk a little bit about some of the system UI, the app bar, the status bar, and soft buttons. These are kind of controls and kind of system UI. So these are the bits that the system will show at times to intrude on your display surface. So we've got the status bar at the top there, which is where all your icons go for, like, battery strength and whether you're on Wi-Fi and whether you're roaming and which strength of network you're on, all that kind of stuff, and a little clock and that sort of thing. And then at the bottom, we've got the app bar, which is the application bar, which you can program to put the primary commands that the user is going to be tapping on to interact with your app. So typically they'll be confirm and cancel kind of buttons, or something pretty major. And also the little ellipsis on the right side of the app bar, that's where you can put secondary commands, which will be text options that will show. So we'll look at this in a little moment. The other bit of system UI, there's also, on some phones, there's going to be this navigation bar, which up till now, pretty much every phone has had hardware capacitive touch buttons on there. So they're part of the kind of casing of the phone almost. You're going to see increasingly a lot of new phones coming out, and in fact, most of the ones I've seen that are about to be released are these. You just get a big slab of glass in a nice shell, and then the actual navigation bar buttons, the soft buttons, the back button and the Windows button and the search button, they are actually going to be sort of just rendered on the screen at the bottom there, and they're not going to be hardware buttons on these phones. So that's, again, system UI. So they are kind of shown on the screen. And that's also consists of system UI. And then the other one is, of course, if you get a phone call, you get the pop-up stuff, the in-call UI that shows when you're taking a call. And all of these four are considered system UI. Now, the app bar, or command bar, the bottom app bar, how you program it in XAML is a bit like this. I talked a little about the primary commands and the secondary commands. These are your primary commands where you put a label, which is the little text hint, and then a icon, which is an image that goes with it. I've got a little demo in a moment, I'll show you. And then underneath that, we've got a secondary command, which again has a label and an icon. Actually, on phone, it will ignore the icon, and it will just show the text. So this is what that XAML looks like on Windows Phone and on big Windows. We've got our primary commands, edit and favorite, which are shown on Windows Phone as an icon button. And then underneath, we've got the secondary command, which is help, which is on the kind of the secondary menu, the text menu underneath. On big Windows, your primary commands end up as buttons on the right, icon buttons, unless you're in a right to left language, of course, in which case it's all reversed. But if you're in a left to right locale, this is what it looks like. And your secondary commands, the less important ones, appear on the left. So this command bar was actually announced at Build last year, 2013, for Windows 8.1.
Yep.
But this is an example actually how the Windows Phone and the Windows team were converging their efforts even way back then, because the command bar is this new control, and it's a very flexible control. If you resize on a tablet, it automatically resizes everything and shrinks the controls to fit. It's very clever. But this is a great example of a control that you program exactly the same on Windows Phone and on big Windows, and that was brought into Windows 8.1 not only to make Windows developers' life easy, but it was also a marker for what was coming with this release with Windows Phone 8.1. So there are some differences from Windows, which I'm just going to call out. On big Windows, you can have a top app bar. Not on phone. We're only having a bottom app bar, so you can only have that. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but actually you could put a top app bar in your XAML. It might just be ignored, or it might throw an exception.
Yeah, no, it will just ignore it, and it does the same with with the bottom app bar. If you put in commands that can't render, or too many commands, too many primary commands.
Oh yeah, because you only got 4 for phone.
Right,
yeah.
It'll show up on Windows and it'll just ignore it.
Yeah. And the other thing with big Windows with an app bar is that in order to see it, it's not normally visible. So in order to see it, you have to put a gesture. You have to do a little swipe from the top of the screen, and then your app bars are shown. That's obviously not true on phone either. The app bars, if you program them there, they're always there unless you programmatically set the visibility to collapsed. So they're always visible unless you programmatically hide it. So it's not transient at all on phone. And you can minimize the app bar on Windows Phone. So that minimized is that graphic is showing a minimized app bar. There's no concept of that on big Windows. That'll just be ignored on Windows, big Windows. So altogether it's converged XAML, but certain properties are just not going to make any sense and will be ignored depending on which platform you're using that XAML on. The icons are really cool, so you can just specify a symbol icon by name, and we've got great help with the tools for doing this. Or you can set a URI source, you can set a bitmap icon, a font icon, a path icon, loads of flexibility and that sort of thing. And you can have flyouts. You can have these nice flyouts on an app bar button as well. So in this case, the user's tapped on the little photo app bar button, and the photo video flyout menu has popped up. And the XAML for doing that is, as you can see there on the slide, where you've got an app bar button. Inside it contains a flyout, which is a menu flyout with those 2 items on it. And we've got names and text on it. So there you go. You see an example of how you can bring those flyouts and the app bar buttons together. The status bar at the top, this is something you can only influence by code. So there's no XAML for programming the status bar. There's a whole bunch of methods where you can cause it to be show async. You can hide it. As you can see, running down the list here, the XAML example, you can show it or hide it. Now, by default, the background color of the status bar is it's fully transparent. Okay, so you can set so you're just seeing through it, shining through it. You see the background of the page is what you're seeing when whatever color is showing through the background of that status bar. But you can set the background color explicitly in code, and you can change the opacity of that as well. And if you really want to know the size of it, which in most cases you're not, for reasons I will come to in a minute, but if you really want to know the size of it, then there's a property on it called occluded rect. Now that progress indicator, I mentioned earlier in the session, we've got these progress rings and progress status bars and that sort of thing. This is where this is how you put it into the status bar. This is the de facto standard, is where you probably want to put it most times. And you simply call statusbar.getForCurrentView.showAsync. You can then get the progress indicator property of that, get you a reference to that progress indicator. You can then set text on it, and you can set it indeterminate. This is the default, or you can actually set a value on it if you want to do a kind of a rolling one. And then you just call showAsync, and it shows it, and hide async to hide it. So nice and simple. Now, why is all this interesting? Well, it's interesting because these are the bits of UI that are kind of maybe there, maybe not there, depending on what what properties you set on it, whether you've set your status bar to be hidden or showing, or whether you've set an application bar to be there, or whether it's hidden or whether it's gone away. So these bits of UI are a bit kind of, they're not really owned by you as the app developer, but they're kind of there. What does the app actually do about it? Well, the good news is your display area that you are drawing to, the 0, 0 view pixel position, which is your kind of the top left corner of your canvas, that starts immediately under the status bar on the top left-hand corner of the screen. And it extends automatically down to the top edge of your application bar. And that it becomes your area, and it dynamically changes. So if in your code you set the visibility of your application bar to hidden, and the application bar goes away, then your area will automatically expand out that you can draw to. Now, and this all happens for you automatically, so you don't have to worry about this, and it actually makes designing for this very, very simple. There are going to be a few cases, and I'm talking a very few, where you don't want that behavior to happen. You want to have the full screen, whatever, and you want to have a bit more control. I'm struggling to think of a reason, but if you think of a reason for it, you can override this automatic adjustment behavior. There's this code line at the bottom. You can do set layout bounds to application view layout bounds.core window bounds. That basically means you get the full display area, but it means you have to write a load of code yourself to react when the application bars come up and when the status bar is visible, and to adjust it for what you want. We've also got these, I mentioned these soft buttons, the transport buttons, if you like, the back button, the Windows button, and the search button. Those are normally visible as well, and part of this, and just taken care of. But one nice thing about that, when you're playing full screen video, it really is full screen. So those buttons will disappear, and you need to if you just tap on the screen, then you'll get it will slide into view again. So they're kind of soft hidden, if you like, and just touch on the screen and those transport buttons will come back in, and you can hit the back button or the Windows button just the same as you would normally. So it gives you a good experience if you're watching video. Right, very quick demo just to show all of that. I need to set that to I need to set my PC. I'm remote desktoping in, so to stop it doing that, because that's annoying. All right, here we go. So we're still in our Contoso cookbook. I'm just going to switch to existing project I've got. So this is kind of illustrating this thing. The code in this visible bounds demo is just to show you how that works. So the important code behind is how do you find out what your visible bounds are? I've got this method called report visible bounds. You can do this get for current view visible bounds, and then I'm going to just dump that out to the screen so we can see what our area is that we're writing to. So here's our app coming up on the emulator, and it's very simple. I've got here, you can see you've got visible bounds, and it tells you that the top corner of our area starts at 26.667 view pixels from the top. So our area that we're starting to draw from. We've got this long list here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is just a list. So it just shows that so you can see what the content area is. You can see that 1 actually starts immediately under the status bar, and then we've got our bottom margin is for this area is 606. Height and width is actually the height of the area that we're drawing to, and the width 400. So we've got 580 by 400 at the moment, and we're showing our app bar. Now if I show the transparent app bar, So we've got the page color, which I set to green, just to show you in the XAML. Here we go, page background. This property, incidentally, is ignored on big Windows, but you can set it on phone because of this weird behavior of this system UI. So we've set our transparent app bar, and we've seen the green color shine through. Doesn't change the 580 by 400. If we hide the app bar altogether, now our height has grown to 640 by 400. And we can set the status bar background, so we can change the color to be something we want. It's still 640 by 400. And if we hide the status bar altogether, now we've got the full screen, and our actual writable area that our UI is using is 667 by 400. Just put these back in, and you know that our UI, it all just automatically takes account of that. So nice and easy for you as an app developer. Right, I'm just going to wrap up this module talking a bit about styles, themes, and theme resources. I already styled a text block right at the beginning of the session. I had the title, header, text size, what they call the body text block size, title text block style, and the header text block style. And there are a few of these, not perhaps quite as many as we used to have with Silverlight XAML actually, but there's a bunch of these are selected for you. And you can have a look at them and see what the definition. I'll show you in a demo in a minute how to do that. But the key thing here is you get these built-in styles. You want to use them because they've got some interesting properties that help them to work to adapt automatically to different size displays, different size phones, and also to different size themes. Now, what do I mean by that? Theme and contrast preferences. This is something if you're a Windows dev and you're coming across to develop for Windows Phone, you probably won't be so familiar with this. I think you can actually set a theme in Windows app settings, but nobody ever does because it's kind of one of those hidden things in the control panel for big Windows. But this is definitely something that Windows Phone users do. They can change the background of their phone to be light or dark and an accent color to be whatever they like. And you know, it's one of those things you wake up in the morning and you think, oh, do you know what? Today feels like a crimson day. So you go crimson, you know, and I want to have a white background. So you do that kind of stuff, and your whole phone, all the kind of built-in colors and the apps list and everything all changes to that, which is very nice. We've also got in Windows Phone 8.1 really good support for ease of access. So if you have trouble seeing small text and you want to make it bigger, you can change your text size in the ease of access control panel shown on the right there. And this will now apply across, if you use the standard controls, text block and text box and that, this will apply to all third-party apps as well. And this is because of these theme resources. These theme resources that are being applied, they respect these settings. They're kind of smart resources, if you like. So yeah, this is list text enlargement support. This is a new thing for Windows Phone 8.1, which was kind of in Windows Phone 8. It was built into some of the built-in apps, but the third-party apps didn't get this. So the controls are all theme aware. So are using internally in their built-in templates, they're using these theme resources. Now you need to test for this. A lot of people make silly mistakes. I'll show this in a demo in just a moment. If you want to set a specific theme in your app, you don't want the user to be able to set your app to work in a white background or a dark background, you can set this requested theme property on the whole application as shown here. So this is your app.xaml file. You can set it and say, okay, on my whole application, I'm dark, regardless of what the user has set their phone to. And you can also actually set this, doesn't have to be at app level, you can set it on any control. So let's put that into a demo. I'm going to go back to my Contoso cookbook for this. File, open, project solution, and I'm going to go to styles and themes, Contoso cookbook. And this is, all I'm going to do is, this is actually, just for interesting, this is a universal app version. So I actually got a Windows version and a Windows Phone just to drive home, for no other reason than just to remind you that everything I'm showing you works on both. So this is a universal version of the same thing. Regardless of that, I'm going to stay with the phone version of it. If you go to mainpage.xaml, and we'll go down and find that crazy, build. this is actually taking it on a bit. So here's we've got some text in here, which if I go into this text block, you can set in the properties window. I could set the foreground to a brush. We could set it to a nice white brush, and in the XAML that should have set foreground to be, well, it's nearly all white. Well, that'll do. And then we'll run it on, set that as the startup project, and run it on the emulator. And our single page app will come up and it will look all right. But then you see that's all very nice. But then the user says, "Oh, do you know what? I want to go to settings." So we go down here to settings and we say, "I really don't like. I want to change my colours and that sort of thing." So we're going to go to a nice orange and set the light theme. So that's all very nice. And now, oops, come back. Thank you. And we go back. Oh, that doesn't work. That's weird. And then we go back to our app. I've got weirdness happening here. Oh, all right, it's because I'm trying to use touch and thing at the same time. Will you stop doing that? Okay, there we go. We're going back to our app. And look, well, it's just visible if you appear, but this is essentially the problem if you set explicit colours. So that is clearly not a good idea, which is why you don't want to do that. Instead, the theme resource, so be careful of setting foreground colours. Oh, by the way, here we are. If you actually want to go to the device tab, you can test this in Visual Studio because you can change the app theme in here, which reveals the problem just right away in the designer. And you can change the accent colour as well if you want to. Not that that makes a huge amount of difference. So obviously that was a bad idea, and you don't want to set. So you want to test against that and don't start setting these things. You can actually drill into any of these. Here we go, body text block style. You can go to the definition. This goes into a file called generic.xaml. So this is actually the definition of a body text block style is something that is based on something called a base text block style. And this is defined actually ways up the top here somewhere. You see, these are all the themes and all the theme resources for everything that you're looking at, all the control templates. It's all defined in here. So you can define your own custom text block styles if you want. And base them on the existing ones that are supplied, and create your own ones to use if the ones that are supplied don't suit you. All right, so we're done with the first bit of that. We're going to take a little bit of a break now, and then I'm going to come back for one of these short sessions, one of these 25-minute sessions. Yeah. But this one, we're going to talk about page navigation and the right camera. Hi. Page navigation and a little bit and data binding, which is going to get rid of this nonsense with huge bits of text embedded into our XAML. So we'll see you in a moment.